Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Health Business, where we bring you up to date with health information. My name is Oluwatoyin Kolawole.
Worried by the alarming rate of drug abuse in Nigeria, the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria (PSN) is set to work on a proposal for the establishment of National Rehabilitation Center for Drug Abuse, which will be presented to both the legislative and executive arms of the federal government. PSN President Ahmed Yakasai made this known while inaugurating the Pharmacy Advisory Board, which comprises past presidents of the society and the Board of Fellows. Yakasai explained that this would enable them perform optimally in terms of drug distribution and discipline to meet the full complement of their statutory mandates.
The whole idea when I was thinking about it was that the lawyers have SAN. So our own fellowship cadre should also be the equivalent of SAN. Now, but one thing has led to the other. If somebody is SAN now, like if you have a Lumide SAN, you don't call his name without calling the SAN, even in conversations. Now, but we have not been able to exploit that, and expectations have not been met. So bringing you into it should wake up a few other ideas with you, because you're now with presidents. But for your being chairman of the Board of Fellows, you have no place here. It is the duty of this advisory board to ensure that there's a good handshake between the leadership and the followership in the profession, between the leadership and the leadership of other professions, so that when you become president of the society, you have arrived pharmaceutically.
Yakasai also called on the federal government to immediately constitute the Governing Council of Pharmacists Council of Nigeria (PCN) and the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control (NAFDAC). As the world celebrates this year's International Day for People Living with Disabilities, a group representing people with disabilities in Lagos State has called on the government to implement laws made for these special people. At a meeting held in Lagos organized by the Network of Reproductive Health Journalists, the executives of the People Living with Disabilities pointed out that the state and stakeholders can no longer neglect the needs of people with disabilities, especially when it comes to issues of sexual and reproductive health and rights.
In the past, it used to be about charity, it used to be about just helping us out, but over the years, it has evolved into a social inclusion concept. So we're looking at disability not from a charity perspective, but from a social inclusion perspective, whereby feeling that persons with disabilities, just like all other citizens, also have equal rights, and we should be able to enjoy our full rights as humans, as presidents.
Along with poverty, unemployment, and other factors that influence not only their sexuality and actions, but also healthcare responses and staff attitudes. The strategy, which aims to make health services and policies inclusive for disabled people, combine efforts to improve disabled women's livelihoods, to engagement with disabilities, to provide input into health service decision-making, planning, and delivery, and to ensure health center staff have access to.
The group also requested that the government should upgrade hospitals and other public places to enable people living with disabilities enjoy such facilities without hitch. Since 1992, the United Nations International Day of Persons with Disabilities has been celebrated annually on December the 3rd around the world.
Recent report reveals that every day, 43 children are diagnosed of cancer, while 12% of those figures do not survive, bringing the survival rate very low. Sit back and watch this documentary on childhood cancer.
Across all ages, ethnic groups and socioeconomic strata, childhood cancer remains the #1 leading non-infectious disease-related cause of death in developing countries, with 43 children diagnosed with cancer every day. 12% of this figure do not survive. According to a report published at this year's Cancer Summit in Abuja, about 4 children died daily of cancer in Nigeria due to late presentation at the hospital, high cost of cancer treatment, superstitious beliefs, financial constraints and lack of access, and inadequate treatment facilities, among others. Consequently, experts have called for urgent intervention and proactive ways to reduce the burden of this disease on children through increased awareness to improve early detection, accurate diagnosis, adequate and qualitative healthcare service to enable prompt and proper treatment of the disease.
Note that the Nigerian population has also been increasing, so our doctor population ratio is still very low. But the main challenge for us, apart from training and producing doctors, is to devise strategies to retain them.
One of the reasons why the Nigerian populace go outside is because they don't have enough confidence in what services we're able to provide for them. We are talking to ourselves to increase our level of healthcare provision, to improve our services and to improve the quality. If we're able to do this with the backing of the government, the level of medical tourism in Nigeria will be greatly addressed.
Little Emmanuel Obiano is 3 years old and has been diagnosed of cancer. His mother recounts her ordeal and the agony of taking care of him.
Actually, we're based in Togo. It's from that Togo, that August, he fell down with the stomach. From there, we started carrying him and he cannot eat. We went to private hospital over there. They say he have wound, they call it his wound. They need to treat him. They gave him some antibiotics for 1 week. And after then, we came back. Within some weeks after, he started running temperature. And the temperature was 38, 39. Once I check it, it's always high. To the extent it's 40. Then before my husband, we started suggesting that whether we'll come to Lagos, whether we'll take him to village. Because during that time, the stomach is getting enlarged and he's losing weight. He cannot eat. This place that is cold, that is the place we see man and lie down. And he cannot walk very well. And you can see him, the eyes is getting as if it's peeled. Before we now decide, me and my husband now decide to come back.
She explained that if not for the help of a non-governmental organization, her boy would have died of the disease.
It's through this Emmanuel treatment that I know that there is nothing that doctors cannot do for people, especially children that is having cancer. They should not go back, they should come. From this, my own experience, because I don't know that children have cancer. I thought it's only adults have cancer. And up till now, I'm seeing what is happening in the world, that children too have cancer. Even cancer, many cancer. What I don't even know is through this Emmanuel and through these doctors that I know that children too have foundation. I thank them that they should, mothers, parents, they should not sit back. They should go, they should come to doctors.
Health Business visited the organization to authenticate the story. Dr. Adebayo Joseph is the founder of Dorcas Cancer Foundation, a non-governmental organization for children living with cancer. Particularly blamed the high cost of treatment for the high rate of mortality among children living with cancer. Said the cost is too expensive that many Nigerian parents cannot afford it.
Everybody is challenged by the economy. It's not always easy to reach out and give, What keeps our donors going is seeing the children. They love it when we can send them videos and pictures and they see Inyolua playing, they see Emmanuel playing, that keeps them going, to see that, Joshua is doing well, Samuel is cancer-free. But it's not easy. It's not easy for anybody to give, and it really is a challenge. Right now, we have a waiting list of more than 10 children who are waiting for a phone call from us to say, oh, we have money for your treatment now, you can come along. And that's not easy to go home every day knowing that there are 10 people waiting for you to call them, and they have no hope until you make that phone call.
Dr. Joseph also called on the government, the private sector, donor agencies and the non-governmental organizations to invest more in cancer care by making treatment accessible and affordable, thereby reducing the huge financial burden on the parents who are still struggling to pay out of pocket.
All we want is to see the children get better. So anyone who has that goal is our partner. And we're willing to partner with anybody who is willing, who wants the same thing that we want. So, and the truth about it is that in any nation, I know people complain, but you cannot get anything done without partnership with the government. And the truth is, the government is trying, they're doing what they can, but even in the best of countries, the government doesn't do everything. So they will do what they can, and we also have our own roles to play.
These experts unanimously agreed that the cost of treatment for children living with cancer is enormous and most parents cannot afford it. They advised pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria to intensify their research and commence the production of medications that will combat cancer, pointing out that majority of the cancer drugs are imported from India, which explains why it is very expensive.
Welcome back. It is important that government create more cancer screening centers and also subsidize the treatment for cancer. Next on the lineup is the pharmacy segment. Don't go away.
It is an eyesore when one walks into a typical Nigerian market and sees drugs sold openly, like common merchandise such as clothes and cosmetics. This attitude portrays an acute lack of understanding of the nature of drugs and the obvious fact that those peddling them are not professionals who are authorized to handle such sensitive products. But the practice has continued to thrive, nevertheless aided in part by the patronage of the public who have indirectly continued to sustain the practice. The practice of selling drugs in the open market has not only affected the general efficacy of drugs by exposing them to extreme temperatures that make them expire early, but has also provided avenue for counterfeits to be produced and sold to an unsuspecting public away from the eyes of regulatory agencies like NAFDAC. What is the position of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria on this issue?
Medicines or drugs, whatever you choose to call them, are not ordinary articles or commodities. They are specialized commodities. That is why most responsible countries place regulation of medicine use within the confines of a central government, of the equivalent of what you call the federal government in Nigeria. In Nigeria today, we have a Fake Drug Act. The Fake Drug Act is very clear in section 2.1 that the sales of medicines, the sales of drugs is prohibited in some places in Nigeria. One of such places is what you just talked about, hawking. It is actually an offense for anybody to hawk drugs in Nigeria.
People now take medicines that fail to cure their ailments because the active ingredients have been lost to poor handling, or counterfeit drugs that have been sold to them because they sourced for their medicines from unauthorized outlets.
If you hawk drugs, it's a matter of common sense that in a tropical environment like we have in Nigeria, what you're doing is that you're exposing the medicine to extremes of temperature. Ordinarily, you have a range of medicines that should be stored at about a range of about 5-8 degrees centigrade. Vaccines, biologicals, insulin preparations, things like that. And then you have another range that ideally should be kept at a temperature of about 8 to 15 degrees centigrade. Now, if you begin to hawk medicines, what you're doing is exposing them to the direct rays of sunlight. And that temperature range will give you something like 25 to some extremes that can get to 35 degrees centigrade, even higher than that in the northern part of this country. And so what you will get is what we call in pharmaceutical parlance accelerated degeneration.
Nigerians also share their own views on the dangers of drug hawking.
So many people take drugs without the prescription of a doctor, and sometimes at the end of the day it causes death and more disease to them. I think that the government should stop it so that it will help our society to grow better.
They don't work with prescription, and most of them you find out that they are not even inclined with anything that has to do with drugs. So they just get them, sell it anyhow they want to, no dose, and really is affecting our community seriously.
Those are fake drugs. They're actually fake drugs, and it's not good for human health. So I think government should abolish such things in the country.
The latest report by the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria reveals that sale of drugs in the open places like motor parks, open drug markets have led to fatalities and various forms of injuries to the health of the public.
Welcome back. Did you know that your lifestyle can affect your reproductive health? Well, let's join Dr. Abayomi Ajayi to get more information about this.
Hello, welcome to Understanding Infertility. My name is Dr. Abayomi Ajayi, and today we're going to be talking about endoscopy. The first thing is to tell you what endoscopy is. As the name suggests, endoscopy, to look inside of an organ without actually going in there. They are like telescopes that have been devised through which you can see so many organs. You can look at the abdomen, look inside the abdomen, you can look inside the uterus. But why do we need this in IVF? Because we know that the aim of every practitioner and even the patients is to maximize the chances of IVF. We keep telling you about the success rate of IVF. That it's not 100%, but that's when everything is even okay. And therefore, when there are some things hindering the procedure, the rate might be abysmal. There are two main types of endoscopies that we use in gynecology. One called the hysteroscope and the other one called the laparoscope. As the name suggests, hysteroscope means that looking inside of the uterus. So we can see anything that is inside of the uterus, or what we call the endometrium, the inner lining of the uterus. So this includes fibroids, polyps, scars, what we call adhesions, especially when it follows the popular surgery that people do in this environment for fibroid surgery. There's a lot of fibroid surgery being done. Some of them, if you ask me, not necessary, but of course they're done. And then also sometimes you can even have what we call septum, in which case they can even divide the uterus into two parts. And some people come like that, that's the way they are made. And if all these things are not taken care of, can, apart from failure of IVF, can also lead to miscarriage. So you see some people who got pregnant now losing the pregnancies. And therefore, that's why it's so important. IVF centers put endoscopy into their armamentarium. There was a study that we did here in this center. We saw that 61% of our patients have problems in the endometrium. So we can say that hysteroscopy should be taken for granted in this environment. It's something that we must do. But what about laparoscopy, you asked me? Laparoscopy is actually looking inside the abdomen, okay? And that we need to do even when we're doing IVF sometimes. For example, sometimes you see somebody either has had a ruptured appendix or has had any problem in the abdomen or endometriosis, and the organs are matted together, and you need to separate them a little bit so that it can give you better view of the ovaries. Sometimes also because fibroids, we can remove fibroids through the laparoscope, and we can actually, we're getting bolder with these fibroids that we're removing through the laparoscope. So bigger fibroids are being removed up to about 5 months. That is compatible with 5 months pregnancy. We can remove using laparoscopy, and then of course ovarian cysts can be removed through this. And sometimes there is a particular thing that we do with IVF. People who have water in their tubes, what we call hydrosalpinges. When you have water in your tube, we've seen that decreases the success rate of IVF. Because the water, because they're static, it's infected, and anything that is infected that comes into the uterus makes it a little bit more difficult. So we sometimes have to clip off the tube before we do IVF, and this has been shown to increase the success rate of IVF. The question you ask me is that, okay, what are the advantages? Of course, the advantage includes that you have faster recovery. People have been known to go home even after major surgeries done through the laparoscope, and there is very minimal scarring because we don't handle the tissues, and then of course it is cosmetic. What are the disadvantages? The main disadvantage is that there are very few people who can do it in Nigeria, but it's getting a little bit better, but you still need to know where you choose the centers properly, and rarely there can be injuries to the bowel. I think that's where we'll stop today. Remember, together we can conquer infertility. Catch you.
I'm sure you must have enjoyed today's episode of Health Business. Join me again next week for a fresh package. Remember, living healthy is a serious business. For advert placement, call the number you're seeing on your screen. My name is Oluwatoyin Kolaole, and the program is Health Business. Bye for now.